Hello folks and welcome to this Monday afternoon's edition of Our Game with myself, Stapleton. Joined as ever by Michael Verney. We're here brought to you by OurGame.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off the great range of stuff that they have. Like this retro Dublin shirt, like that Offaly one there. I showed its image as well. Huge amount of stuff going there at the moment. So go there, use the promo code OurGame, get 15% off. Michael, how's she cutting?
All good, Shane. I was just saying to you off air, like, popular or not, I'd gladly wear that Dublin top on a night out. Nice pair of dark jeans, nice little pair of, maybe a pair of loafers or something like that, and you're good to go.
I'd say it'd be boot-cut jeans on you, and I'd say it'd be a big old brown buckle of an old belt, and maybe, God knows what else. Probably a comb over a few years.
Let's just say I didn't have to dress up much going to Garth Brooks, as to say.
Oh, the old hat was there available to you all the time. By the way, anyone who wasn't there on Friday night, we had an unbelievable time at the first Our Game coaching clinic. Matty Kenny, Martin Fogarty and Kieran Kerry. One of the best things, actually, I put up a video on the Our Game Instagram, which you can check out. Martin Fogarty talked about tackling. It's absolutely brilliant. But one of the most entertaining parts was the start of the show. It was just, I was there first, myself and one of the other coaches, Johnny. And then in comes Matty Kenny. I knew he'd be first in. So he was first in. A couple of minutes later, Kieran Kerry. Then Martin Fogarty with his sort of an old school hurley. It's a different sort of shape. The boss wouldn't be quite as big as these days. But himself and Matty started going into it about, should the toe of the hurley be facing in or out when you're rising the ball? So now when I was a kid, I would have turned it in, which I would have thought was the funny way to do it. And it quickly had it coached out of me so that the toe was facing out as a right-hander. So you sort of get the toe, the sharp part under the ball. But actually, Matty and Martin were having it out over this thing. And Martin was very much that you'd have the toe pointed in because you're almost scooping the ball towards yourself like that. So the sharp part going under the ball. And I could sort of see his point to some degree if you were rising it going in that direction. But yeah, it was very unnatural. And eventually Kieran nearly had to mediate and just say, we'll leave it at that, lads. We weren't making any ground.
Well, I'll put it to you this way. I don't see too many of the Kilkenny boys doing it that way. I'll put it to you that way. Like, of all the counties, it's the one county where you will always see lads rising the ball, nearly always in an orthodox fashion, if they're an orthodox player, if they're a natural right-hander, natural left-hander. But I did the same as you, Shane. The toe would always been pointing to the right-hand side anytime it was picking it. And if I just think it looked awkward and weird the other way. And I would have always thought that the ball had to go over a greater surface of the hurl and was less likely to end up in your hand as a result of that as well. That's what we would have been told when we were young anyway.
Yeah, so just a reminder that we have a couple of more of these clinics coming. Like, one of the best parts for me was that it just happened as a sort of natural dynamic that Matty called in Kieran and Martin to help him out with the first drill, or just, when they were doing a drill where they were shooting, he had Kieran and Martin hand passing the ball to the lads coming through. And it just ended up being this real collaborative thing where all three coaches were chiming in on each other's drills where they were exhibiting a skill, and one of them had dragged the other over and come in here beside me as if you were tackling for the ball. And we have a couple of more coming up in the next few weeks. One of them is down in Father Manning Gales Club, which is down in Longford. This will be a brilliant one with Oisin McConville, Davy Burke and Colin Nally. So these are three guys who are at the top end of the game, know what it's all about. So that would be absolutely brilliant stuff. We've also got one coming up very soon in Naas. So this is County Kildare. By the way, the first one, that's on the 15th of October, Saturday morning. And on a Friday evening coming up on October the 21st, Shane Dowling, Dan Shanahan and Richie Power. So there's a link in the video description if you're watching on YouTube there. That's going to be absolutely brilliant stuff. And again, looking forward to the three of them boys getting stuck in and having lots to say. What are the big topics from the weekend, of course, Mike?
But sure, there's lots of big topics and there was some brilliant club games, but the only story in town really is Paul Mannion and Jack McCaffrey coming back with the dubs and a pretty swift announcement. And it's the second time where there's been a Dubs TV announcement where it's, Dermot Conley's back training with us there a couple of years ago, just thrown into the middle of a sentence when he's going through a list of fringe players that may or not be fit or may or not be back training. And Desi just throws in yesterday. It was obviously very pointed. He wouldn't have been doing, like, I don't recall him ever doing one of these interviews.
Oh, that was the whole point of it. That was the whole point of it. We'll just throw it in there absent-mindedly almost.
It was to get it in there. And obviously, Paul Mannion picked up a knock the previous night with Kilmacud. But to me, and I'm a hurling man before I'm a football man. I love both codes. But this has me totally re-energized for next year already. Totally. I'm all in for next year now. And you're probably thinking that Dublin are favourites to win the All-Ireland. But that's now, there's a lot of water under the bridge between now and next July. The two lads obviously have to stay fit, but it's two players, the most dynamic wing back we've probably ever had in Gaelic football, and one of the most exciting forwards we've ever had, who just requires so much attention that even he's going to kick probably 2 to 3 points per game, but he's going to take some amount of minding from opposition defences that other guys will be allowed to excel as well. And I think it's, to put it out now from a Dublin point of view, anybody that was even half considered walking away would not walk away. Someone commented to me yesterday, like, would this be the, a sign that Owen O'Donnell will go back with the hurlers? I don't know if you know anything that I don't at this stage, but if I was Owen O'Donnell and I had been in with the footballers last year and thinking Paul Mannion and Jack McCaffrey are coming back, I'm thinking, geez, we have an even better chance of winning All-Ireland here. I could feature potentially with these two guys.
I think he has less of a chance of getting game time.
Potentially, yeah. I don't know whether that's the way he looks at it, but that's obviously possible too. He was good. He was good in the glimpses I saw for Whitehall the other night when he did get on the ball. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
I don't agree with you there. I don't agree with you.
Did you hear what I said? He was good in the glimpses that I saw him when he was on the ball. I didn't say I watched the 65 minutes.
I think he's very, very good, but he lost the ball nearly every time he got it. Like, he scored with his first effort, and like a lot of the time he was turning and he was ploughing at Nafina, but it wasn't really working out for him. So I don't know what you were watching, but it sounds
highlights. Yes,
sounds like a different game to what I watched.
They don't show in highlights. They don't show lads getting turned over.
Look, I rate him massively, and I think he's an absolutely wonderful hurler, and I'd love to see him back out there again, and brilliant athlete and all that kind of stuff. But the other night, it did feel overall it didn't go for him. The last time we saw Jack McCaffrey in a Dublin jersey was the 2019 All-Ireland final replay win over Kerry. But do you remember the first day out when they went down to 14 men, and he found himself up centre forward? He was man of the match. He was unbelievable. And I didn't expect to see him back in a Dublin jersey ever again when it went from one season into 2 seasons without having him with the Dublin team. In fact, it's 2020, 2021 and 2022. So that's 3 seasons out. Now, he is arguably the best player in the game if he's going at full tilt. But is there any chance that a couple of years out of the game, 3 seasons out of the game, and he mightn't actually come back quite the same player?
There is a chance, definitely. And you'd love to know what he's been doing probably in the last while as well. Yeah, so dynamic. I wonder how much he's been doing for the last while. I wonder how he's been keeping his eye in. I believe he was in Europe for a while. Was he or was he working abroad, I think, or something there for a while as well? But just even the buzz of having him back, it won't be a seamless thing, but it's September now. He could have 3 or 4 months right good preseason under his belt. I'm sure if it's the idea of knowing that he's going to be back, that he'll be ready to go whenever he does come back. Like, look, they can't go back training, I think, until mid-December officially. They've obviously trained unofficially before, outside of times. But like, he's got plenty of time to get back in. If he was open enough about putting on weight fairly easily before and not really minding himself. But he knows he probably needs to mind himself now. And Shane, if he's going back in, he's going back in, and it'll be a tunnel vision job. But it's just going to be fascinating. Another year or two, and it was too late, I would have said. And like, he was obviously, what was the year? He stepped out as Footballer of the Year in 16, didn't he? And came back in 17. So he would have slipped back in a lot easier as a younger player. He'd probably find it a bit more difficult now. Probably will. But just the idea of having him back and what he can offer them, the weapon he can offer them, they don't have a player like that.
Yeah, we'll be mentioning some of the results from the Dublin Championship a little bit later on. But McCaffrey, he didn't feature for Clontarf in their senior relegation defeat to Raheny on Sunday, but he did act as a water carrier. And this is the other thing now, about 3 years away from inter-county level. And if, he said he'd put on a small bit of weight or whatever, I'm sure he'll drop it off in the space of a couple of weeks. But, what will his injury profile be like? Will the body be able to take up the training again? Will they have to be very careful with how they manage him to ensure that doesn't become a problem? Paul Mannion, of course, went off injured the other night, but that was more down to like an impact or coming down off a high ball. But like, you can still see from his club stuff the last year or so. Now, he has picked up a couple of injuries, but you can see that the talent is still there. And it's something that Dublin need. You could see that the inside forwards last year were lacking a little bit. Obviously, they didn't have Con against Kerry last year. And to be honest, I would have thought that if they did have him, they would have beaten the Kingdom, and we'd still be waiting for Kerry to win an All-Ireland. But for me, Dublin are huge favourites now. And one of the other people that I felt sorry for the other night when I saw this announcement was Kevin McStay. I was like, he's thinking he's coming back and maybe Dublin are beatable. And now all of a sudden, arguably two of the best players of the last decade or so, two of the top 20 players, we'll say, McCaffrey probably even higher than that, are back in for Dublin. And they're both arguably at prime age.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I don't think anyone will be too worried about it at this stage. Whether they'll be on the field and be able to go full tilt whenever they play them in a big knockout championship game. And there's a lot of water under the bridge, as you say there. And there's more likelihood of an injury. You just don't know with how condensed the championship is. Could pick up a knock at the end of the league and be under pressure to play championship. So that all kind of remains to be seen. But definitely huge excitement, as you say. Like, hopefully when they play Kerry next year, if they do play them, that they'll have potentially three of their best players back. Con is their best forward and potentially their best player. Mannion and McCaffrey on board as well. It definitely lights it all up for me already. Hugely exciting. And I suppose from a Kerry point of view, I'd say if there was ever going to be any element of complacency, this will knock it off them straight away. Because it's funny, Kerry are All-Ireland champions, but everyone will have Dubs as the team to beat again, which is probably a good scenario for them.
What an ideal scenario. By the way, there was one free over the weekend that has to be talked about. This is from Barry Riley. Unbelievable stuff here. King's Court against Kilkenny. Look at that. And I mean, you wonder, why don't people do this a little bit more often? You've got a goalkeeper there. He's not expecting to go for goal. 1v1 from 14 yards out. I know there's two on the line, really, but the other lad is probably more there as a traffic cone than anything else. Why don't more people try it?
I'd say a lot of people don't have the confidence in where they'd actually be able to put the ball, maybe. Obviously, have such a margin for error when you're putting the ball over the bar. You can put it, anywhere within, what are we looking at? About 15 meters, and then God only knows how high you want it. Whereas there, you have to put it in a specific area. It's all about how languid the style was. The run-up style was, though. It made it look like he was just going for a tap over the bar. Like, there's a defender about 6 or 7 yards away from him, and he's not tuned in at all. The defender on the line is not tuned in. The keeper's kind of half tuned in, but if he was really tuned in, he'd have someone on the post with him. I can't get over how they take it so easily. They take the goal. Like, I'd be absolutely bulling. And to just walk out there like nothing's after happening. I couldn't believe it when I was watching it. But definitely a bit of a touch of class and a bit of just spotting an occasion that's after arising in a game that doesn't always arise. It's sloppy, complacent, lazy defending, and he spotted an opportunity and he took it. I remember chatting Shane Dooley about this before, about 21-yard frees. And he said to me, I remember, he probably won't like me saying this, but they won the county final yesterday, so it doesn't matter now. So if they go and play in Leinster or something like that, maybe someone, they're hardly going to be listening to this show anyway. They will be actually. They probably will be actually. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but what he said is if you think there he is yesterday, by the way. Yeah, looking well. He had to go off at one stage yesterday. He got a bad slap in the head, but you make it look like you're going for a goal from one of them, and you do the run up and you just blast it over the bar. And then the next one, maybe you make it look like you're going for a point, just standing over it. And they're like, in the back of your brain, you're like, he's not going for this. Maybe one lad doesn't go back on the line. All of a sudden, there's a little corner or an opportunity for you to put it in. So sorry, Shane, if I'm after blowing your game plan, but I do think it's very smart. And you need to, even a 21-yard free, there's an opportunity to, like, you should always be trying to fright the opposition team. You should always be keeping them on their toes. And then you keep them on their toes, and then all of a sudden, maybe you drop your body language drops, you don't give them a hint, and then bang, you get a goal when they're least expected.
You could have easily said, I know this lad who does this without dropping in a name. And if Shane Dooley never speaks to you again, do you know what? He's doing the right thing.
He doesn't speak to me much anyway, because I'm usually pulling and dragging out many times we're playing them.
Do you know, over the weekend, I kind of had a bit of a mare. So, as some of the regular viewers will know, I was away a couple of weeks ago out in the Adriatic, and I was flying in and out from Venice as part of a trip that involved Croatia and Slovenia as well. But I bought a couple of bottles of aftershave, and I thought, this is the right job. This was in Venice Airport, 20 quid a pop. And I said, geez, you can't go wrong. And they smell fairly nice too. So I've been using one of them for the last couple of weeks. And then over the weekend, I said, try give the other one a go. This bottle of stuff here, Moschino, do you see it there? And I says to myself, not so bad. So I took it out of the box, as you might do. Not too many people apply the aftershave while it's still in the box. Took it out of the bottle and I said, yeah, that's a little bit fancy looking. The little Italian colours and all. Sprayed on a small bit. Met a friend then, and he said, are you sure that's men's perfume or men's aftershave? He Googled it. Turns out it's women's perfume. So I was heading into RT yesterday with women's perfume on me.
Good man, Jesus. Yeah, fair play for being as transparent as you are with all of that.
I didn't sleep last night.
Yeah, I'd say you might got a bit some unwanted attention maybe. I don't know. It depends what type of attention you're looking for. But that's a gas one. I thought it was like the episode Only Fools and Horses where they put onion in Boise's cologne and he was going around smelling like basically onions and people were running away from him and this kind of crack. But yeah, listen, each to their own, Shane. Whatever makes you happy.
There's the mother's birthday present coming up. I hope she's not watching.
Yeah, I hope she's not watching anyway.
Yeah. So former Tyrone star Ronan O'Neill, he's involved with Fermanagh now as a selector coach. It's not the first time that we've had a Tyrone influence in Fermanagh. Like Ricey McMenamin, even Joe McMahon's been involved the past couple of years. Peter Canavan was manager there as well. So there's a fair bit of an influence coming in there. We also mentioned the Limerick jersey, which was, of course, to help fund the team holiday that went on sale last week. Which also involves, personal letter from John Kiley and Declan Hannon. But as we were saying at the time, the price, €150, a little bit Irish. There's been a bit of a backlash and they've dropped the price to 100, which is a bit more doable. I'm not entirely sure how many people will buy it. I've seen counties before run these fundraising ideas and they've kind of been damn squids. I wonder how many this will sell.
Did you call it a damn squid there for a minute? I think you did.
Yeah. The one of my lobster.
I'd say, I don't know. I'd say in a successful county, I'd say they'd still sell quite a few of them. I don't think they're particularly nice, personally. When I look back on it a bit closer with the names, I just don't think it's that nice of a jersey. At least they listened to what people were saying and reduce the price. People are saying now that they should, like, every jersey is €70 or whatever and they shouldn't be paying any more. There's obviously no profit margin or anything for the holiday if they just charge the normal price, I'd imagine. But yeah, I'd say anyone that was going to buy it will probably still buy it. I don't think it's particularly nice, if I'm being honest with you. It's not the nicest. I've seen a lot nicer training jerseys, I'll put it that way.
Declan O'Keefe says, replace the little Italian flag on the perfume with a tip flag. It will then be considered men's perfume. Not the worst idea, so maybe I'll give it to the father for Christmas instead. Declan. By the way, it's 40 years since Jack 2022. I know teams have to fundraise, but even 100 is still a bit much, but depends. If it was a Limerick man, depends, but I don't like the design of the jersey. It's 40 years since Offaly's greatest glory? Would you call it the greatest glory?
I don't know. Greatest glory. You probably would, to be
honest.
The most
dominant Kerry team of all time.
Yeah, it's probably like before the Dubs came along, and maybe Limerick hurlers now and the Kilkenny hurlers are looking at the greatest, GA team of all time, and little old Offaly were able to stop them. The great thing about Eugene McGee always said it was all about keeping in the game and trying to create that opportunity or that chance where they could maybe produce that bit of a smash and grab, and they surely produced it at the very end. And it was an unbelievable goal. I love Darby's jig. I love the fact that we tried to throw away the game then in the remaining couple of minutes, and we coughed up a couple of opportunities that we shouldn't have had. But yeah, that was unbelievable. It's funny, I was thinking about this, Shane, when you clock up 82 and then you look at 94, we probably got our comeuppance with the minors this year. We'd probably been doing smash and grabs for far too long, and we got our comeuppance and we realized maybe what it was like to be on the other side of the coin. But that 82, that's probably, it's probably one of the greatest GA moments of all time, whether you're from Offaly or otherwise. And just the nature of the goal, and Micheál O'Hare's commentary, is there a goal in the game? And then there was a goal in the game, and just brilliant, nothing like it.
Yeah, SSRI says 81 was the greatest glory for Offaly.
Yeah, 81 was a poor game. It was a great win, all right. I think we beat Leix, Wexford and Galway to win the All-Ireland in 81. And I'm an Offaly man, but I will say that is a soft-ish All-Ireland in comparison to some of the All-Irelands that have been won where you have to maybe beat the big three along the way. In fairness, 81 was brilliant. All right, it was a horrible game, but a great finish. That was our first, obviously. But I think beating Kerry in 82 was right up there. As hurling glories go, 81 and winning the first one was probably the best one. As football goes, obviously the back-to-back in 72, 71, 72. But stopping Kerry, who were deemed invincible at the time, and then came with another run thereafter a couple of years later. Yeah, like that was, and everyone was shouting for us as well. The whole of the GAA community was behind us.
Yeah. Let us know what was your big GAA moment of the weekend. We'll be coming back talking a little bit more Offaly in a second, but might as well just mention that Zach Toohey and Mark O'Connor booked their place in the AFL Grand Final against the Sydney Swans. Ty Kennelly is the only Irishman to win a premiership. It's Geelong they play for, isn't it?
Geelong, yeah, they're playing the Swans in the final. Obviously, Colin O'Riordan had to retire due to injury there recently. He would have been involved with Sydney, which is obviously very disappointing from his point of view. But I think Zach Toohey's going to be making his 250th appearance for AFL appearance in the final. I think the great Jim Steins at 264. Like, he has cut out some career for himself over there. And Mark O'Connor, he's not a rookie at this stage, but he's made some impact. And obviously, when Kerry weren't winning All-Irelands, that would have been the lost player that they were talking about. That could be the missing piece of the jigsaw. And listen, who knows if he was to get a Premiership medal, maybe he would be, more likely to come back and play for Kerry, not next year, but in the coming years, because it's a big kind of box ticked when you do get that. Like, you can obviously win another one and get on their equivalent to the All-Star teams and that, but I'd imagine scaling that height would be huge for him. And, not saying what else would be left to achieve, but the itch to go back and play for Kerry might, grow a bit more if he were to tick that box.
Yeah, and I wonder too about Dara Joyce, who's left St Kilda after 6 seasons. This was announced a month ago, give or take, at this stage. But he's 25. He's back playing with the Roar in Stieg at the moment. He is planning on heading back out to Melbourne and get another team. But let's say things don't go his way and he doesn't get a team. Will he be part of Derek Ling's plans next year? You'd imagine he would. Like, he was a minor All-Ireland winning captain. That's a good few years ago at this stage. His hurling would obviously have to sharpen up. But even playing at the moment, maybe he'll get a bit more of a graft for the hurling. Maybe you'll have people sniffing around and sort of planting the idea in his head. And who knows? That'll be one to watch, assuming that he if things don't go his way, like we're saying.
There'd be a lot of guys when lads are home like that. I'd imagine there's a lot of lads trying to set up jobs for lads, trying to put things in place for them potentially to stay. And I'd imagine it's the same even when Mark O'Connor is home, even though I know, like, any of the times he's been home recently, he's, his mind is firmly made up on playing AFL at the moment. But like, I think you interviewed Ray Kennellan before. Didn't he go back out when he was kind of cut and went playing with a lower tier? I think he was working in a cafe while he was still playing. The lifestyle, lads that do like that Australian lifestyle, there's a great quality of life to it as well. And he's obviously, achieved a decent level at the AFL, and there's obviously plenty of other opportunities. It might just be a matter of picking up another club and going again. But Kilkenny folk will definitely be looking, because his window for ever playing with Kilkenny it's small enough at the moment, I would say. But it completely closes probably in the next year to 18 months, just because hurling is such a game where if you take a few years out, you might never get back. You might never get that touch in around your feet, that kind of mobility, that kind of natural, kind of instantaneous kind of reaction to when the ball is in around there and get your eye back in. So I would definitely be following that one closely.
Yeah, by all accounts, Joyce had a good game at the weekend, says Richard Hogan. Yeah, if you have any more details on that game for the Roar, let us know. So what about Offaly at the weekend? The semi-finals were on. They both seemed tight and dramatic in the last couple of minutes. Kilcormac beat your Burr 119 to 17 points, and Belmont were in a brilliant position against Shinrone, but the latter got 2 goals late on to get to their first final since 1960. Belmont had never been there, and I think they were 7 points up in the second half. You might start with that game first, and then we'll go on to Kilcormac-Killahy against Burr.
Yeah, that game in Burr on Saturday was one of the great smash and grabs, I'd say. Belmont were in complete control, much the better team the whole way through. And it was literally, a couple of balls in around the square near the end. There was a long ball left in. You'd feel sorry for now. The Belmont keeper, Barry Egan, went out to bat it. Now, I don't think goalkeepers should be batting balls, really, generally. And he just missed the bat and went straight into the net. I think the resulting puck out then went for a sharp puck out that was turned over, I think, and Shinrone actually hit a wide, but Belmont had could see the jitters by all accounts. And then it was an innocuous enough ball from about 70 yards in, hit off the keeper's chest and went into the net. And Shinrone were really, really poor. There's no point in saying any different, especially in comparison to the Rhinus game. But this team has been trying for so long to get to a county final, and it looked so unlikely for long stages. It really, really did. And they managed to pull 2 rabbits out of the hat. And Belmont having been beaten on penalties the week before, the footballers were beaten on penalties for ban. And then there's no point in saying any different. They threw away a place in the county final the other day, unfortunately for them, because they were much the better team. Paddy Clancy, David Nally all had a big impact, but just a couple of mistakes at the end cost them. And it's Shinrone's first county final appearance since 1960, and it's only their second ever in their history. Fair play to them. They'll have to up it a lot, and I expect they will too.
And like Belmont had themselves in that winning position, 7 points up. Who was playing well? Like Oisín Kylie's not back all that long. How did he go?
He was quiet enough, Shane, to be honest with you. That was his first game to start. He came on in the last group game, about 15 minutes to go. He got an early score. He actually went off injured with about 7 or 8 minutes to go. And I think he went down. He got, to look at me, he got, not a great slap off the ball. He ended up going off. He didn't want to go off, but he was down for a good while. He ended up going off. He was quiet enough. I'd say Paddy Clancy was in with Offaly was good. David Nally was very good as well. A couple of uncharacteristic wides at the end, maybe when they could have really killed off the game. But even after Shinrone got the first goal, Belmont came down and got the next score, and you're thinking, okay, they might just weather this storm here. And in fairness to Shinrone, Sean Cleary clipped over a couple of points for them. Adrian Cleary clipped over 4, I think. But I always say, just put the ball in around that square. I tell you what, you will never win a game or score a goal by not taking a shot. I'll put it to you that way. Sometimes I think teams try to be just too fancy and overplay the ball. If you take a shot or put the ball in there, there's a chance of it going in. Whereas you try and give that extra pass the whole time and try and force it too much, you won't even get your shot away, and there's not even a chance for the ball to go in. Shinrone gave themselves a chance. It looked a very unlikely chance. But they're in a county final now, and they'll fancy their chances too, because it's a relatively open final.
Yeah, I mean, generally teams try and work the ball up the field, but there are times when you have to throw it into the mixer. And as you were describing that there, I couldn't help but think of Derry against Galway in the All-Ireland semi-final this year. Late on in the game against the Galway team that had struggled on high balls against Armagh, they refused to put it in the mixer. There are certain points in the game you don't have a whole lot to lose. Like even the 2018 All-Ireland final, when Limerick obviously saw it out against Galway at the end, and Canning was going from the free from way out the country. It wasn't a scoreable distance. But the fact that it was even around the house, it gives you that opportunity to get 100%, the score. 100%. I'm also thinking Claren Bridge against De La Salle back in the day. Obviously,
I watched that recently, Shane. That's painful to watch. Jesus, that is painful to watch from a De La Salle point of view, because they actually cleared the ball just before that, and it ended up they cleared it, and it looked like the siege had been lifted. Then the ball ended up back in the square again.
Yeah, it's the same. Even like you already mentioned it, Tipperary against Offaly in the minor All-Ireland final this year as well. Sometimes you just have to put it in there. Most of the time it won't work out. But now and again, when nerves are jangling, you put that ball in towards the end, crazy things can happen.
I just think we tried to be a bit too smart sometimes, Shane, in the game. Football and hurling. I think we tried to be too smart. I think, I'm not saying that you just lure the ball up the field or anything like that. You definitely don't. But there's definitely an agricultural nature to the two games. Get the ball in around the square in those dying seconds. Force somebody to do something positive to bring it out. I'll put it to you that way. Force someone to have to think, oh, Jesus, the ball is coming in here and there's a potential chance for a mistake. And in fairness to Shinrone, they did that. It was highly unlikely. Belmont looked winners the whole way. I think it might have been the only time they led was at the final whistle. It's nuts. And they play Kilcormac now in the final. Kilcormac were much the better side against us yesterday. The scoreline probably flatters us as small, but we didn't play for the first 50 minutes.
You were miles behind, 10 points behind at one stage, weren't you?
Yeah, it could have even been 11. I think we had 2 points on the board after 20 minutes. I think they kind of goaded us into going short from puckouts, and I think they wanted us to do that, and they got a lot of joy from that and were able to turn us over, and we were kind of at 6s and 7s when we were doing that. When we went a bit longer, particularly in the last maybe 20 minutes, we got a lot more joy there. But they killed us probably out around the middle of the field. Killian Kiley hit definitely 4 from play anyway. you're talking about agriculture. They had Jorhelian in at the edge of the square, a big, strong ball winner. He scored a point, set up definitely 1-2, and was just a nuisance. And when they were playing with a big breeze behind them, there was no messing. They got the ball in around him. They made it look like maybe they were going to go shorter, and then they put a ball into the edge of the square where he was 1-on-1 a lot of the time, and he got a bit of joy there. Alex Kavanagh in the corner got a lovely goal. We had a chance, actually, funnily enough. We started coming in
penalty,
the last,
didn't you?
Yeah, within the last 10 minutes. We had a penalty when we were 5 down. Owen Catton, I'm sure he went for a goal, but it ended up going over the bar. Instead of being potentially 2 down and getting another goal to win the game, we were 4 down, needed to score twice, didn't score after that. I think Killian Kiley put over a free to win by 5. Kilcormac will have gotten a nice little scare out of that game as well, because it was a bit of a scare. They should have probably had the door closed and shouldn't have left the opportunity for us to come back at all. But they'll definitely be favourites going into the final. They won their first county final in 2012. So it's a chance to win their 5th. Shinrone obviously have never won one. Kilcormac will be favourites, but I would expect a much improved performance from Shinrone. It's the ideal scenario for them because they're coming into the final. There should be a load of pressure on them, but there won't be, if you get me, because they kind of they fell into the final. Kilcormac had a very good performance for 50 minutes, and most people, they'll be the team that are on most people's lips going into the final. But yeah, I wouldn't rule out Shinrone. It'll be intriguing to preview that in a couple of weeks. And Trevor Fletcher managed Shinrone to a county final on Saturday, and then I think he was playing with Kilcormac Junior Bs yesterday. So he's playing against Ross Gray is his native club, but he's playing against his second club in the county final, and he will absolutely know them inside out. So that's another kind of intriguing narrative to that final.
Yeah, we love the old subplots. Let us know if there's any storylines over the weekend that you thought were great. Let us know on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook there, and we'll definitely get to those comments. So the Offaly Senior Hurling Championship B final was on. Tullamore beat Clara 3-9. Shane Dooley, as you mentioned, he was key to the Blues there, and they're going for a double with the footballers facing Road next Sunday. So the Leix Senior Hurling Championship semi-finals, they were also on over the weekend. Clock Ballyhale are going for 3 in a row, and they're back in the final after seeing off Castletown with the minimum of fuss, really, 221 to 114. Rathdowney Earl against Camross, that was 218 to Rathdowney Earl, 123 to Camross. So they're back into the final for the first time since 2018. They recovered from a 6-point deficit after Brandon McGinley and Eric Killeen had netted for Rathdowney Earl inside the opening 20 minutes. Daniel Delaney got a goal back for Camross. It was level at the break. And I suppose ultimately Zane Keenan's 14 points were huge here. So that's a massive result. And then a big save laid on from Tyg Dorn. I think it was from a Mark Kavanagh free from give or take the 21. So that's a huge one for Camross.
Big time, yeah. Just an aside there, good to see. We weren't sure about Mark Kavanagh's fitness. Good to see him back playing, and hopefully he's able to stay fit. But by all accounts, Camerons have a decent conveyor belt of underage talent coming through now. And with their kind of heritage and history, they'll fancy themselves in the final too. But Clock have been really, really good the last couple of years. Obviously, that Leinster final performance is probably, still kind of hurting them a bit, but it doesn't look like it's hurt them in a bad way. It looks like it's driving them forward. They'll be heavy enough favourites going into that. But yeah, Camross are after regrouping a bit. I think they had the 2 disappointing years in a row in the championship. They're back in a county final now, and when you have that man Zane Keenan shooting the lights out like he is, they're always going to have a chance as well.
Yeah, Castletown Gagan, they're into the final as well in the Westmeath Championship, seeing off for Harney by 119 to 15 points. So just going to check up a couple of the details there. But obviously that's very much Castletown dethroning the current champions there. County star Niall O'Brien hit 9 points, avenging last year's defeat, and a Peter Clark goal early on kind of gave them the impetus from there on out. So that's
I think Clonkill away in the final, don't they?
There, yeah, and Sunday week. So that's the situation in Westmeath. So in Antrim over the weekend, there was a couple of quarter-finals. So we already know that Dunloy are into a semi-final, as are Rory Oak, Cushendall. Ballycastle met St. John's 117 to 118, so that's St. John's through. Ballycastle started off well, but conceded a goal just before half-time, which levelled it up. And then St. John's went 4 up early in the second half, and they always kind of stayed in front. Like Oisin McManus, Shay Shannon and Darren Bradley, very good. On the other side for Ballycastle, Tiernan Smith and Ronan McGarry, they had good performances. And then the other one, Ballyhale Shamrocks, 327. O'Donovan Rossa, 20 points there. I think a big part of this might have been that Rossa were missing a few players. But that, obviously that's nothing to do with Lochgiel. Paul Boyle scored a couple of goals. Shan McGrath added another one. James McNaughton, who's impressed us a lot the last couple of years with Antrim, he hit 9 points, and Eddie McCluskey with 6 from play. So lots of lads stepping up in that game for Lochgiel.
Yeah, I think Eddie McCluskey was playing when they won the Club All Ireland as well. Kind of diminutive player, good player too. Obviously Lochgiel have a great pedigree there as well, and it's getting towards the real kind of meat and drink time of the season there in Antrim, and the cream definitely looks like it's rising to the top. And you'd have to say the same in Kilkenny. The first kind of real weekend of championship hurling, I would say, in Kilkenny. Lots of big results. I suppose probably the biggest one of the weekend is last year's county finalists. O'Loughlin Gaels were beaten on a scoreline of 3-9 to 114 against Mullinavat.
Vegas. Why did I call it? Like Nisha Waldron there, who's obviously commenting with you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. He was doing co-commentary on TG Carr yesterday for Glenmore against Ballyhale Shamrocks, and he mentioned that Mullinavat had beaten O'Loughlin Gaels and called them Mullina Vegas. So there's, for some reason or other, in Mullinavat, they call it Mullina Vegas.
Well, a fella sent me on the fixtures for the quarterfinals, which we'll go through now in a minute, and he just sent on the Borough v Vegas. And that's all he said. And I actually had to check it, and then it was like, all right, that makes a bit of sense. Funnily enough, Ross Gray would often call himself, he'd often be called Ross Vegas as well. Just one of these things, I suppose. That's more to do with the sounding of the words, I'd say, than anything else. But just to fly through that game there, that's obviously a big upset. I know O'Loughlin Gaels hadn't been going particularly well this year, but they weren't going particularly well last year before kind of turning it around. But goals by Liam Fennelly, I think he got a goal in the first minute. Ger Malone and Ian Duggan. Ian Duggan very, very good as well. But the 3 goals ultimately proved the difference. Even though Mikey Butler was very good and John Walsh, obviously John Walsh, who got that 2-4, 2-5 in the 2014 All-Ireland minor final. He was quietened by Mikey Butler. Willie O'Dwyer, who's still going strong at 38, did a decent job on Hugh Lawler. Hugh Lawler was centre-back for O'Loughlin Gaels. Paddy Deegan tried hard up front for the Gaels, but they struggled in the full back line outside of Mikey Butler, with those goals really proving the difference. And I believe Andy Comfort stepped down in the aftermath of that game as well. So O'Loughlin Gaels are probably on the lookout for a new manager now. Lots of other big results as well. James Stevens 125, Lisdowney 214. This will be, it's a big win and an important win for the village because they'd been under pressure. Not going great. That's a big score. Like we looked at it, they were beaten 2-12 to 14 against Dixborough. I think we said it on the preview show, like 14 scores will not win you anything. But obviously to go and hit 26 scores, I think they were 11-3 up in the early few minutes. I think Lisdowney actually pulled it back and were 1 down, but Ty Dwyer, very, very good. Conor Brown, very good for them as well. And Niall Brazel, very good. I think Niall Brazel ended up with similar to tally to what Zane Keenan ended up with 14 or 15 points. So they might have turned the corner now. We've seen it other times with the village. It mightn't be going particularly well. Get a win in, that first round / relegation or a quarter final and could go all the way to a county final. But definitely this game, they'll need to, develop a bit more consistency, and we'll go through. They're obviously playing the Bridge in the quarterfinals, which we'll go through in a minute. The Bridge gave them a nice little clipping when they met in the group stages of the league. So those quarterfinals are going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, so just referring back to that first game between O'Loughlin Gaels and Mullinavat, Joe Butler says, I'm afraid we O'Loughlin shot too many wides on Saturday. And then Nisha, who's talking about the Mullinavat thing, said, Vegas, baby. I was always told that it's because they have a strip like Las Vegas, so a dead straight road through the village with shops and pubs on either side, and then nothing.
I absolutely love that, I have to say. I absolutely love that. That's ingenious, I have to say. There's nothing like that Vegas strip. It's just mad. It's just all these mad lights, hotels, casinos, restaurants, and then you drive out and there's basically just desert. It's crazy. Best place on earth, bar none. I've been there nearly double digits at this stage.
it's a tacky wonderland. So Tullaroan won the league final against Bennett's Bridge, and Clara beat Dixborough in the Shield final. But realistically, neither team is all that fussed about those games, because it's probably the one game where you can afford to nearly take the foot off the gas for a week before you go back into the knockout stages where it is do or die. Richard Hogan says Village pulled away late on. So
funny you should say that, Shane. Clara actually didn't start a lot of kind of first teamers and ended up bringing them on, and that was the difference between them winning and losing. That was only for a Shield final.
That's an ideal way to do it, isn't it?
Probably, yeah, probably. From a Tollerone point of view, they are motoring away nicely now. They are tipping away nicely, and they'll fancy their chances now going through. Especially like I don't think they couldn't play the Shamrocks, and I'm not sure if they can play them in a semi-final either. But they're motoring nicely now.
Richard Hogan says Ballycallan appeared to be very poor against Comer, who were dominant throughout. And I think we kind of predicted that would be very much Aaron's own win in that game. The quarterfinals are going to be Bennett's Bridge, like you said, against James Stephens, Dixborough against Vegas, Clara against Ballyhale, and Castlecomer against Tollerone. Castlecomer being Aaron's own. Any particular fixture sticking out for you there? I mean, look, again, we haven't really talked about Ballyhale just yet. They put up 326 to Glenmore's 20. I was impressed with the way Glenmore stayed in the game and kept it competitive. Like, they went a nice bit behind. They were 10 and 11 points behind at different stages, but they never gave up. They didn't throw in the towel. It didn't become an embarrassment. Yeah, it was comprehensive, but they stayed going. A couple of different players stood out. I thought Alan Murphy did well. Owen Murphy did well. A couple of the corner forwards were influential. Shane Hennessy kept battling in the forward line. But there's just a gulf in class. And sometimes if both teams go out there and the application is there, the class is generally going to come out on top. So, I mean, I think it was always likely. And to be honest, I'm not sure it was a great decision to put that game on TV. Yeah, there's the star power, and a lot of people would tune in initially for that. But probably some of the other games in Kilkenny, if I was making the decision, and I'm not trying to second guess TG Cahir in this situation, but I just, after the way those Waterford games went a few weeks back, I would have thought once bitten, twice shy, and just picking the big name teams. It just, there was probably more competitive fixtures to be found. But I suppose the other side of it too is not every county board is willing to give away games for TV because they're afraid of it affecting the attendance on the day. Now, I know that the fees have doubled in terms of like the broadcasting companies with the county boards because of that factor and because of selling streaming rights and so on. But yeah, it was just one of those games where you were never, like, it was decent standard and all that kind of stuff, but you were never enthralled by it.
I suppose you're guaranteed the big names. You're not guaranteed a great game. I think they probably, the idea of having the big names rather than maybe taking a punt on another game that you think is going to be deadly and maybe turns into a damn squid, as you said yourself earlier. It's a tricky kind of balancing act there. At least, I suppose from their point of view, you're going to have TJ, you're going to have Adrian Mullen, you're going to have Owen Cody, who was on another planet yesterday, and can just, like, as you said there, the application can be the same nearly from both teams, and you just have a bit of a gulf in class. And on a given day, if the application is there from Shamrocks, they're going to be very, very hard beaten because the class is definitely there.
Yeah, I mean, Adrian Mullen was very good at times. He had an awful lot of wides, but still, he must have scored 4 or 5 himself. Just very, very good performance out of it. Well, just more that he gets on the ball so often. Like, he's obviously such a
good outlet, Shane, isn't he? He's always, I notice he's always waiting out in the wing in particular. He's always there for a 20 or 30 yard pass when a defender is in trouble. He's always waiting.
Yeah, and to be fair, like, as I said, Glenmore kept going, but just that little bit of gulf in class. And TJ didn't have to be his absolute best in this game either. Jerry Aylward, I thought, actually fought really, really hard for Glenmore. He had Joey Holden on him. Good little battle there at times. I mean, he moved out the field too, so he wasn't always on him. But there's just such quality in that Ballyhale team. Ronan Corcoran, very good around midfield. Paddy Mullen, he got a couple of scores as well. Dara Corcoran was able to raid up and back from wing back, as was Evan Shefflin. So look, it doesn't need to be explained. There's an awful lot of quality in that Ballyhale team.
You're mentioning a lot of lads there that aren't even involved. The vast majority aren't involved with the county squad as well, which is just like,
I wonder, surely Ronan Corcoran's going to get a bit of a go at some stage.
Yeah, no, definitely. The two Corcorans are definitely of county standard, I'd say. Like, even someone like Brian Cody would have been very, very good in recent years as well, and would have been in around the squad. But definitely, obviously, didn't feature last year, obviously. So, going to be interesting to see whether Derek Ling takes a different look on things. As well as that, you're on about the quarterfinals. I know we say it no matter who they play, but it's going to be Big Dan coming up against Big Brian Cody in the quarterfinals, which is definitely going to be interesting. You could definitely see, like, if Big Dan was around in Cody's area, you could definitely see him landing in on the edge of the square and on top of him, and a right good duel taking place. But that's going to be interesting because obviously the Bridge beat the Village already. So I said to you before, like I said to you about the Shinrone Belmont game. Belmont beat Shinrone by 7 in the group stages, and then I know Shinrone could produce the smash and grab, but so often the result changes when it comes to a knockout game by the team that was beaten in the previous game. So the Village will definitely be looking to turn things around in that quarter-final game.
Yeah, Richard Hogan said the matchups, TJ on Scruff, obviously Owen Murphy, Jerry Aylward on Joey, it just never caught fire. Nisha says Brian Cody was down to start the programme but was injured and so couldn't play. In case you couldn't tell, I really enjoyed some of the scores and skills in the Shamrocks Glenmore match. Yeah, Nisha a couple of times went full Gary Neville with the this sort of stuff. And then a question actually that I came away from the match wondering is, I wonder could Derek Ling tempt Colin Fennelly back? Might be no harm. Looked fresh and full of beans yesterday, says Nisha. Yeah, he's a battering ram up there. He still looks in fantastic shape. I think he's maybe 32 now. Just checking it up online there. He's actually 33, only just gone a few weeks ago. It would be unusual to recall a player at 33, but could he go back and be as, Paul Mannion and Jack McCaffrey we've talked about earlier? Maybe throwing him in there with Kilkenny would be no harm because he's still going to test out any fullback physically.
Yeah, and obviously he had a bit of a frustrating kind of a club campaign last year, and I felt like he was just maybe off it a small bit, and he probably needed a break. Probably like he'd been going for a long time between Kilkenny and the club. Potentially wouldn't be as a starter maybe if he was coming back, but imagine the experience he could add in there, and that'd be a real last dance type scenario if you're able to get him back. Who knows? He's had a nice break over the summer. Depends on what way a manager wants to go. Is he going with youth, or does he think by bringing back an older fella? I think there's massive benefits from bringing back a lad like that. If he
I think any manager should be saying, what's giving me the best chance to win here?
What's giving me the best chance of winning next year? You can't be looking like 3 or 4 years. Well, you can, in a way.
But Derek Ling, he probably feels pressure to lay down a marker straight away, to do well straight away, so that the talk of they haven't kind of moved on from Brian Cody, or he's left a huge chasm there and whatever, and maybe Ling hasn't. He's going to want to be able to want to step in and win a Leinster title straight away, win a league title, dispel talk of Brian Cody, and talk about the future, not looking backwards.
Yeah, no, 100%. And listen, he'd obviously have a lot to offer. Of course, he has a lot to offer. And imagine him coming in with 10 or 15 minutes to go. They don't I don't know. We don't know whether Richie Hogan will be there. We maybe don't know whether Big Walter will be there as well. So I'm not sure whether they're going to have maybe that type of a player to come in and make an impact. That type of experienced player, he'd definitely tick that box. And obviously, if he's motoring well, you could start him, absolutely no issue there. And he was the difference. You have to probably remember he was one of the big differences when Kilkenny did beat Limerick in 2019, and it was probably that goal where he took about 15 steps was ultimately the difference.
Yeah, and of course won an All-Star that year, which isn't that long ago. Galway Championship round 4 of the groups was on over the weekend. St. Thomas's 22-game unbeaten streak came to an end, and fairly emphatically too. Turlough scores 223, Thomas's 14 points. And we know they're going for a 5 in a row. And I was just watching the highlights there. Sean Loftus seems to be in great form for Turlough. He put up 112 here, including a penalty. Fergal Moore still fighting the good fight for Turlough there as well. I'd say after them losing that county final a couple of years ago, he'd be desperate to get a title there. He's 40 years of age and still flying it. But would you be unduly concerned if you were a Thomas's supporter, or would you be thinking we're already through, it doesn't really matter?
You'd probably like to keep the unbeaten streak intact, but they've probably got a bit of a wake-up call here. Didn't obviously have a full team available to them. Turlough probably needed to produce a result like this, just to something to maybe build on for the rest of the championship. They were obviously beaten in the final in 20, very disappointing last year. But yeah, I wouldn't be unduly worried. Been honest with you. I just think there'd be a different proposition in a knockout game. So no, I wouldn't be unduly worried. But it was a statement win from Turlough, who obviously have Franny Ford in charge of them, who's going to be a coach selector with Micheál Donoghue in Dublin next year. I wonder how he's been greeted. Even like Dahi Burke, the current Galway captain, is one of his most important players with Turlough, and obviously he was involved with them in 2017 and 16 and 18 and 19, and he's going to be wearing he's going to be wearing sky blue colours next year. It's just a bit it's a bit of a mad one.
Yeah, it's a bit like, when TJ Reid was saying last year about running into Henry Shefflin down at the shop after he's taken over Galway. There's a bit of that sort of vibe going on here as well. Tom Quirke was a good target man up front for Turlough. I'm nearly sure I heard the commentator say his nickname, he's just called Tom Tom. Not really sure why, but I suppose, it's as simple as a nickname as you could come up with, really. But yeah, he and Loftus scored the goals before half time. So that's...
Shane, is there where Sean Loftus has been tried cornerback, he's played wing back, he's played midfield.
Sweeper.
Yeah, sweeper as well. Don't ever remember him playing in the forwards. You were saying to me off air that it's sort of player that you have to find a place for. He has all the hurling. Like, where do you find a place for him, if you know what I mean? Is he a floating forward, or where do you play him?
Like, he's 25 now. I mean, his exact age isn't online there, but I'm just working out that he's pretty much 25. This should be his time now. So if he's obviously flying at the moment, scoring 112, even though plenty of them are frees, that's fine. But he scored at least 4 or 5 from play from watching the highlights. He looks like he's absolutely flying it. He has very crisp hurling, very nice hurling. Didn't agree with him playing cornerback a couple of years ago. I remember he played against Owen Cody that day in the Leinster final in 2020. I just didn't think it suited him. But as a sweeper, he's got the hurling. But yeah, you just want him somewhere knit and play together in and around the middle third of the field. Like Tom Monaghan, he's stepped up in the last year or so. Ronan Glennon looks like a player who can kick on. And if Sean Loftus could put his hand up for another one of those positions in the middle 8, all of a sudden you might be thinking, rather than Galway trying to get a final twist out of some of the older players before they start to move on, that maybe, that they could be displaced by somebody like Sean Loftus, or, maybe playing alongside them, because he's definitely got the hurling. He's a little bit smaller than some of the other players out there, but not everyone has to be 6'4" to play inter-county hurling. So to me, it's just trying to have him as maybe a half forward who plays out in midfield, or a midfielder straight up, or a midfielder who kind of sits a little bit and tries to get involved, get on the ball, because he can use the ball really, really well. But maybe some Galway supporters out there are watching as well. What do you think would be the best thing to do with Sean Loftus? Where would he best fit into this Galway team? What would you think? I think middle 8 somewhere.
Yeah, I wouldn't see him as an orthodox wing forward, and under puckouts, but I would see him around breaking ball and getting on the ball, because as you said, he is very, very good in the ball. You mentioned Ronan Glennon there as well. By all accounts, he was the best man in the field when Mullia just fell to Portumna. Portumna came with a bit of a flurry to beat them in the Galway Senior B Championship. There's another player that looks like he could make a mark at county level over the next couple of years. And obviously Tom Monaghan had a brilliant year this year, a bit of a real kind of resurgence after disappearing off the scene for a while. So Henry Shefflin's going to need more and more of those lads. And someone like Sean Loftus, who's been in around the squad for probably about 5 years, there's plenty of potential there. It's probably just a matter of, sometimes it's just a matter of actually just putting that responsibility and faith in a lad and telling him, we're going to go with you. We believe you're good enough, whatever. We're going to play you in around here. And then all of a sudden you see them kind of flourish. So the interesting, he's been one of the best forwards in Galway, if not the best forward in Galway this year so far in the club championship. So I'd imagine, I'd say not even middle 8. I'd say, that kind of middle 5 from 8 to 12, somewhere in around there, I'd say.
Yeah. Is there anyone else out there in the club championships that you think is really standing out, or a panelist that has never quite fully established himself on the starting 15 on a regular basis that you think in your club championship that you've been watching might be able to step up this next year? Loughrea beat Capitagle 123 to 18 points. Kilkenny, they took a heavy enough beating against Gort. That was 229 to 13 points. Clarenbridge drew with Castlebar. That was 124 apiece. And Sarsfields beat Killimer Daly handily enough, 317 to 12 points. So that was neighbours clashing there. Killimer Daly have quite a striking away jersey. It's sort of like a maroon and then a light maroon. It's kind of like the Galway jersey, because it also has the Supermax sponsor on it as well. Kevin Cooney scored 1 goal and set up 2 more, so he's in good old form. And just what caught my eye for Killimer Daly was Mark Lally, who was wearing number 22. He scored a couple of nice points for Killimer Daly, and Paul Craven was good on the frees also. Tommy Larkins beat Crowell without too much fuss there, 416 to 16. And you already mentioned the Senior B, Portumna beating Mullia. So we'll talk about Limerick now, and we'll probably just tee it up with a couple of the comments that are coming in. Joe LK20 says, was that the Ahan the Pearshik game yesterday? The amount thrown at the referee from the sideline was nothing short of unplayable. Feel sorry for referees. Also, Joe LK20 says, Niall Moran roaring his head off after Ahan staying up to Senior A next year. At the twilight of his career, nearly 40. Fair dues, absolutely there. Couldn't agree more. And that's the Tipper or the Limerick comments for now. So maybe you might go into the results.
Yeah, surely will. Just fly through the results and then go into them in a bit more detail. So South Liberties 318, Ballybrown 120, Blackrock 317, Mungret St. Paul's 220. So as a result of that game ending in a draw, which was probably unlikely before the start of the game, that meant if South Liberties won, that they'd booked their place in the quarter-final, and they did with that win over Ballybrown. Kildimo, Pallaskenry, 23 points, Gary Spillane 19. Gary Spillane started well. But Kildimo worked their way back into it. Darren O'Connell, who's obviously on the Limerick squad, tipping away up on the scoreboard. Cottle Downs scored 3 points from wing back. So that's a huge win for them. They're promoted to Senior A next year and in a quarter final as well. Then go through the other results there. Ahan 212, the Piercing 121. So as our viewer mentioned there, even though Ahan were beaten, they retained their Senior A status. Doon 121, Kilmallock 24 points. So as a result of this draw, Doon go into the quarterfinals, and Kilmallock, the reigning champions, are through to the last four. And it finished Adair 122, Patrick's Well 122, and Adair are relegated as a result of that. And the Well go through to the quarterfinal stages. So
yeah, well, Declan O'Keefe said Adair should have beaten and relegated Patrick's Well. They hit 20 plus wides and threw it away. That's going to be a very, very bitter pill to swallow there. I believe just in terms of players who stepped up really over the weekend, Tom Morrissey apparently was brilliant and had a great battle with Mike Casey in that match. With Ballybrown, Colin Coughlin was suspended, so he missed that game, which was massive for Ballybrown, who'd been having a very, very good year before they met South Liberties in this game. Tom Ryan, he scored a couple of goals, my old clubmate from Coola there for a couple of years ago. Because Colin Coughlin was missing, I believe that Aidan O'Connor, who we've seen with the under-20s of Limerick, and I saw him with UL as well, really good hurler, he was back midfield. So they were missing players. He was back around midfield. And, you know, obviously you'd want him in the forward line. You'd obviously want Colin Coughlin somewhere in the middle eight as well. So that obviously came against them. Cathal Down's going very well for Kildimo. He definitely got a few points from the half-back line, and he might be someone that John Kiley is interested in. I think Shane O'Brien, he might have picked up a bit of an injury for Kilmallock over the weekend. So you'd be hoping that there's nothing too wrong with him. Also, actually, just back to that original or earlier game we were talking about between Adair and Patrick as well. Apparently, Evan O'Leary, very good under-20s cornerback. He had a good battle with Peter Casey there. So there's plenty of players that seem to be stepping up for some of these younger Limerick players like Keane Scully, Mikey Gavin, Davy Fitzgerald, all Croke Cup winners, that they've all given good performances recently. And I'm very interested to see who's the next in this sort of production line for Limerick that's going to come through, because there's obviously no lack of talent there. But we'll be moving into the quarterfinal stages in Limerick pretty soon, and it'll be getting tasty enough.
Definitely will. Kildimo, Pallaskenry have a chance in their quarterfinal. I don't think anybody coming from that other group since it's been introduced has actually won a quarterfinal. That's I was reading it or listening to it somewhere yesterday. So that's obviously going to change at some stage. They've been very consistent. I think Mungret beat them in the first game, and they've been very, very good thereafter. So they're probably, the most likely to cause a bit of an upset, but it wouldn't be a massive upset were they to get all the way through to the semi-finals. And it's funny, like they were only intermediate champions. They're intermediate champions last year, I think. Yeah, like it's been a fairly sharp rise for them. Even regardless of how that quarterfinal goes, promotion to Senior A is huge for them. Massive.
Yeah, so it's going to be a draw to determine the quarterfinals. Doon or Patrick's Well against Kildimo, Pallaskenry or South Liberties. Very hard to see Patrick's Well winning it from here when you consider Keenan Lynch is out. I think Aaron Gallan might even be carrying injury. So that's going to make it very difficult for them. They were missing other players earlier in the season, and it's, I think, 2 games they lost by give or take 14 points. So they're up against it this year. And Doon, out of the teams there, Doon would probably be the one most likely. I think Anthony Nash scored something like 8 frees for South Liberties as well, and Barry Nash was also supposed to be very good. I think he set up all 3 goals in that game. So obviously he's hurt and taken his inter-county form into the club. Yeah,
without a doubt. Asher, listen, that he obviously is a forward by nature, so they'd have no problem. It's funny, you see a lad that could be playing. Obviously, see him playing cornerback with Limerick, and you have no problem putting him centre forward, full forward for the club. He can play anywhere in around there, and he can be playmaker in chief for Limerick, and he can be playmaker in chief for his club as well. But even having his cousin Anthony in the goals and the ability to stroke over frees from excess of 100 yards is obviously a bit of a help as well. So it's probably no coincidence that his arrival in South Liberties has definitely helped push them that little bit further as well. And they'll be another one, fancy themselves potentially winning a quarter-final and booking that kind of historical trend.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was plenty of games on in Dublin over the weekend in the football championship, and it was pretty entertaining viewing. Some of the games were on Saturday evening on RT, and the first one that was on was Whitehall Colmcills against Na Fianna. For a finish, Na Fianna won by 112 to 111, and just in terms of the scoring, Na Fianna had Conor McHugh as top scorer there. He hit 1-3. David Lacey had 3 points. Brian O'Leary 2. David Hannon, the goalkeeper, had a free, and then Ali Fitzgerald, who was man of the match. Michael Day and Aaron Byrne scored a point each. For Whitehall Colmcille, Cormac Costello scored 1-3, included a penalty late on, also 3 frees, so he was held scoreless from play. Owen O'Donnell, he hit 3. As I said, as Michael said, he did have some good moments there, but in other ways, Owen O'D had a very good performance on him. He was playing full back. Keith Campbell scored 2, including a 45, and then Lee Gannon, Dara Scanlon and Sean Gannon, they also got on the score sheet for Whitehall Colmcille. But very impressed with Na Fianna that in the last number of minutes, having been nicely ahead, they conceded a penalty. Johnny Cooper it was his second bookable offence. He dragged down a player who was driving through on goals. I think it might have actually been Owen O'Donnell, and it was a penalty for Cormac Costello. So what happened was they conceded a penalty and which levelled the game, and had a red card in the last couple of minutes, and still managed to see the game out. I mean, that shows serious stuff from Na Fianna, really under the cosh at that stage.
Big time, yeah. Johnny Cooper's first yellow was a bit petulant. Lad was kind of holding out of him, and he just kind of shrugged him and kind of threw him to the ground.
Could have been a red, really, actually.
There was no need for it, really, because he had the free already, and just a lot of frustration. I don't know if it was frustration that he couldn't get away from him or what. I'm not sure, but that could have cost him. It could have cost him dearly. But as you said, they reacted really, really well to his absence. And like, did Whitehall score after the penalty?
I'm pretty sure they didn't, actually, because
no, they scored a fisted effort at the end, I think, from a high ball in.
Do you know what? They scored 2 more points after it, but at that stage, the Fianna had gone from it being a level game to pushing on 3 ahead.
Yeah,
and Whitehall got 2 more late on. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I probably saw more in the other quarterfinals. I wasn't blown away by Na Fianna, but it was probably workmanlike when they were down to 14 men to get the result that they did. But
one thing that stood out to me was that, and I don't blame them for doing it, because you do whatever the rules allow you to get away with. Na Fianna did some very cynical fouls late on. There was one stage that one of the Na Fianna, or one of the Whitehall players, was running through, and David Lacey just grabbed him and held him so he couldn't move. Now, he didn't drag him all the way to the ground, so it obviously isn't a black card, but that just shows you the shortcomings in the rule. It was as cynical a foul as you could imagine. It was as cynical as Sean Kavanagh and Conor McManus all those years ago, the thing that kickstarted the black card rule. And still, he gets away with it. Like, Na Fianna were down to 14 men. If that was refereed properly, if it was if the rules were written properly for it, Na Fianna wouldn't have done it. David Lacey wouldn't have done it, because he would have been got off the field, and then heading deep into the game, heading towards injury time, they'd have been down to 13 men, which obviously allows Whitehall to completely squeeze them up the top end of the field, obviously look to turn them over. But to me, that just showed the shortcomings in the rule. Very frustrating. Whitehall did enough to have themselves in a position to win this match, but just came up short here. Great response from Na Fianna late on after the red card, and saw it through. So, and then there was the clash of the cash after it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this now, I have to say. And I kind of thought when we were chatting on Thursday, I thought Coola had a decent shot. Had been very, very competitive, and they were very competitive and brought massive energy. I was just loving the turnovers all over the pitch, particularly when Kilmacud were attacking at different stages. Some big turnovers. They didn't really afford Shane Walsh much space, particularly early on. Paul Mannion probably got a small bit too much space in the opening few minutes. Didn't get much thereafter. And it just they probably weren't able to get Con on the ball enough in the second half. Got him on the ball. Yeah, got him on the ball quite a bit in the first half, but just couldn't get him on the ball in the second half. And it seemed, when he was full forward, they couldn't get the ball into the full forward. When he was even moved out, they couldn't get the ball to him there. But even saying that, when his brother Niall got the goal, you're kind of thinking, ooh, this is, they're really putting Kilmacud to the pin of their collar here. Paul Mannion goes off, and they just kind of choked the life out of him, didn't they? Crokes just kind of choked the life out of him, and had that bench to come on as well. Just a couple of guys with a big impetus. But to me, it is a missed opportunity for Cuala. I know. They just didn't even get that goal chance at the end to give themselves maybe a real chance of, robbing something at the end, even though it wouldn't have been robbery based on the first 50 minutes. But I thought they made it a right battle, and from a Kilmacud point of view, it was a great one to win.
Yeah, I mean, there was a chance for a goal early on. Like Con caught a nice crossfield ball that went into the area. I can't remember if it was Kildare or if it was Niall James who had the goal chance, but it was kind of blocked out for a 45, which I didn't know Con took 45s, but he tapped it over.
I think it was Luke. Was it Luke Keating? No, off his left foot. No,
maybe it was Luke Keating. Yeah,
he hit the side net, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, and Luke Keating had some lovely moments in the game as well. And it wasn't always happening for Niall O'Callaghan, but the way he took that goal was real quality. But yeah, the ball just didn't go into Con enough at all in the second half. There were times when you're just thinking, get the ball to him. It doesn't matter where on the pitch he is. He's at least going to try and beat a man. He's at least going to send people backwards. And he got one lovely point in the second half, but not enough ball went to him otherwise. And at the very end of the game, there was a ball lobbed into the area. I think it might have been Niall James who went up for it, looked to sort of pad it into the net, but it went just over the bar. So Cuala had their opportunities, but you'd have to say Crokes, the way that they responded after conceding the goal and just boxed Cuala in. Like I said probably a million times at this stage, when you're playing the direction that Crokes were playing in the second half, which is towards the golf course end, it does feel like you're playing down the hill a little bit. So in hurling, it feels great when you're facing a puck out that's coming from that direction. In football, even more so, because obviously it won't travel quite as far. So if the other team squeezes up on you, it's really difficult. And, Cuala just couldn't work the ball out. Shane Walsh got more into the game. Now, and Cuala went, physical, like as they had to on Walsh and Mannion. You're not going to stay looking at him and admiring him. But over the course of the game, ultimately, Shane Walsh got a couple of scores. And, he's knocking him over with his left foot from the 45. It's very hard to come up against a team that can do that and has a couple of lads that can do that. Like, there's so much quality on that Crokes team.
Was there a bit of an energy deficit with Cuala in the last 15 or 20 minutes? I felt like they weren't able to carry the ball through the hands maybe like they had in the first half. It's a couple of times even they kicked the ball long and it was actually turned over, like quite long, like 30 or 40 yard kicks that were lower percentage plays maybe. I don't know if that was to do with the toll of what it took to be in the position that they were in, but I just felt that they weren't able to maybe hold on to the ball or work it through the lines maybe like they had in the first half.
Yeah, well, put it this way. Number one, Crokes have such a good team in the first place. They obviously got to an All-Ireland final last year without Mannion or Shane Walsh, who's since been recruited. But Cuala had done well to keep into a team that had, the likes of Andrew McGowan, Killian O'Shea, Rory O'Connor, Carroll, who've all been county panellists, as had Craig Diaz, who had a very good game here. Paul Mannion obviously went off injured, which was in the lead-up to that goal that Cuala ultimately got. You're trying to keep into Shane Walsh, Hugh Kenny, Darren Mullen. These are all players who have an awful lot of quality. And then off the bench comes Shane Cunningham, who for many other clubs across the country would probably be their star man, or certainly a guaranteed starter. You'd be building the attack around him nearly. You're bringing on Keenan O'Connor, Shane Horn, who played for Offaly, Ross McGowan, who I think has been in around the Dublin panels, Conor Casey as well. Like, the level of quality you're bringing in when you're playing down that hill in the second half, and obviously Cuala had that hill in the first half, so I'm saying this to credit Kilmacud all the way. They have such quality, and when you keep bringing players like this on, as maybe Cuala are slightly tiring to some degree, trying to keep into all those lads, I still think Cuala did brilliant because they were pushing all the way to the very, very end. But there's just such quality in that Crokes team. They have to be favourites for the All-Ireland.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking about them being All-Ireland favourites, and I was just thinking, like, you do not win things on paper, and they had to really go and earn that the other day. But that could be one of the sternest tests that they get in Dublin now. Just from a Cuala point of view as well, I have to say, I thought Mick Fitz the other night, he was really on the edge, and I loved it. He has got this down to a T of getting the ball and potentially taking the man as well, which is totally legal. You're getting the ball, and he was kind of not following through, but you're going for a ball. Your momentum takes you in through the man. I thought he was really on the edge the other night. Like, he was brilliant, and they needed him to be like that. Some people might say he was maybe the other side of the edge a couple of times, but I thought he was absolutely brilliant. And even just the interview after, Mick's kind of soft-spoken fella, just to see how much it meant to him. I think he was at a wedding in Brighton the day before. Was he best man for someone the day before? And to come back then and produce a performance like that, like he's been around the scene a long time now, even at county level. I wonder, will he like the prospect of marking Paul Mannion in training next year as well? But no, I just thought he was brilliant in defeat. Yeah, he's absolutely outstanding in defeat.
Yeah, he got man of the match on TV. I thought Conor Mullally was very good carrying the ball out from the back as well. But look, we've kind of said about Crokes many times. There's so much quality there. And Craig Diaz, geez, he really was excellent. Also in Dublin over the weekend, Ballyboden St. Enda's 3-15, Ballantyre St. John's 3-10, Castleknock just 5 points they put up against Thomas Davis, who were county finalists a couple of years ago. They hit 112, led this game from start to finish, very much dominated this one. And then the relegation clash, we already briefly mentioned that Clontarf had lost to Raheny by 5 points, and Skerry's Harps scored 4-12 to Round Towers Lusk's 1-8. What about the Kerry Championship? Surprise, who we're going to be talking about here.
Sure, listen, Clifford was obviously needed yesterday. They were playing against Spa, and Spa were very good. But East Kerry were struggling a bit. Clifford came on for the last 15 minutes and hit 3 points. And I'd Adrian McGrath having a go at me, a regular viewer on Twitter, saying that I was blowing Clifford up too much and that none of his points were spectacular or anything like that. But
they were all spectacular.
I have to say, I thought all three were spectacular. I thought all three were unreal. Just even to come into a game like that cold, like I know he's warmed up and that, but you've come into a game as well, Shane, where it's difficult to come into a match. Like he's not used to coming on. He's used to been starting and he's used to having loads of ball. His first touch, I think he took did he take a bounce kind of sidestep? You know, his bounce that is nearly a sidestep in one and takes him away from the forward.
It's unfair. He should be banned from doing that because he's too good at it.
Stroked that over with the left. Then he stroked one over with his right from the far side. And then he stroked one over from about 42, 43 metres with his left foot as well. To me, all three were spectacular. And I just think every time he plays, you need to... I know maybe it sounds a bit stupid, but I just think you need to cherish every game he plays, like genuinely every time you see him, because I think he's an absolute joy to watch. I have to say, I think he's an absolute joy to watch. And he is an absolute superstar and probably he's the biggest star in the GAA at the moment, and he's going to be for a long time.
He's the Erling Haaland of Gaelic football. Like I'm not the biggest Man City supporter in the sense that I find Pep Guardiola the most unlikable manager in football. So therefore I wouldn't really want his team to win, but I will just always turn on Man City because I just want to see Erling Haaland. And Mick Foley, the Sunday Times a few weeks ago, did a piece where he went down to see Fossa play junior football in Kerry. And there was huge crowds there, crowds they've never seen before, all because people just want to see David Clifford. And so to me, left footer like Erling Haaland, scorer of spectacular scores, scorers regularly, and like a bit like Haaland also in that he finishes difficult chances in there's such an inevitability when he gets a chance, even a half chance, that well, this one's going into the back of the net or over the bar already, that it kind of makes me laugh because it's just so inevitable. It's just like, it's silly. A bit like Tony Kelly there for a spell in the last year or two as well. You get this half chance and you'd just be like, it's just silly.
The word that describes the two of them would probably be machine for me. They're just machines. They shouldn't be like it's almost robotic in the sense that just keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. It's phenomenal, really.
Yeah, and yet at the same time, there's such grace to what Clifford does as well. So he's a graceful machine, if such a thing exists. Declan O'Keefe says Erling Haaland can't play off both feet as well as Clifford can. Maybe, yeah, you're on a point there, but I suppose he can use the old head. Although I suppose it's legal for Clifford if he wants to start headering the ball. He probably wouldn't be so bad at it. He needs to do a few flying and judo kicks through the air as well, like Haaland did last week in Europe. We should also mention that Spa's David Spillane had a goal chance early in the second half, and Mark Kelleher made a great save there. So that was 14 points to 9. Pretty tight game overall, especially if that goal had to go in. Austin Stacks beat West Kerry 2-13 to 1-8. Temple No and St. Brendan's, they had a pretty tight game. I think Temple No won by a point there, 3-7 to 112. Mid Kerry beating the Gael by 20 points to 16. Crokes off Shannon Rangers by 10 points. St. Kieran's lost to Kenmare Shamrocks by 4. Field Rangers beat South Kerry 2-13 to 13. And Cairns O'Reilly had a fairly heavy defeat to Dingle. And this is a week after losing heavily to West Kerry. Paul Ganey, very good again. and Cairns Rally, who were in the final last year, they're already out. By the way, it should also be mentioned that for Lawn Rangers over the weekend, Mike Frank Russell, at the princely age of 45, but still looking 22, he came on and featured. So there's plenty of golden oldies that are still lining out for their clubs.
And he doesn't look like he's aged, Shane, really. Like, he doesn't really look
Refuses
like he's aged. And he's, refusal to age. It's Benjamin Button. Kieran McManus was doing similar for Tubber. I think he was 46 at 47 in the Offaly Senior B Football Championship. They were beaten last weekend, but he was playing midfield and still kicking points. It's gas. It's only when you get to our age, as I say, I'm a couple of years younger than you, but it's only when you start feeling that bit older, you just think these lads that are still doing it, like Fergal Moore is still doing it for Turlock at 40. Like, it's phenomenal, really. Conal Keeney, who kicked over a sideline for Ballyboden, I think turns 40 next week and is still playing dual senior with Boden. Like, that's a joke, really. Do you know what I mean? It is. It's unbelievable. They are freaks somewhat to still be able to do that. And fair play to them. They obviously put in an awful lot of time recovering between sessions and kind of minding themselves and making sure they're in peak condition.
For sure. In the Cork quarterfinals over the weekend, Nemo Rangers didn't have it all their own way against Carbery Rangers. It finished 2-4.
You can say that again. That sounded horrible.
Yeah, I mean, like, to put up 6 scores over the course of the game and still get through to a county semi-final, that'll tell you that it certainly wasn't one-way traffic. Like, Jack Horgan scored a great goal. That was a bit of a free-flowing move early in the game for Nemo, and it cancelled out a 3-0 lead that Carbery Rangers had set up for themselves. John Hayes, people will remember him for Cork over the years. He got some lovely scores for Carbery. And then I suppose the second goal was a real killer for Rangers, because somebody, I can't remember who took the shot, but somebody took a shot from outside the D, came down off the high post. Barry O'Driscoll put it into the back of the net. And, you know, when you're scoring 2-4, which equals 10 points, for 3 of those to come off a ball that came down off the post, that's a real killer.
That is a killer, yeah. Just going through Owen McCormick's report in the Examiner, he's obviously down at the game. He just started talking about Nemo's uncharacteristically poor shooting, general lethargy, and their struggles in the face of the latest West Cork blanket to set up against them meant that the men from Trabeg went scoreless for the last 30 minutes of a shocking first half. They'd only 2 scores on the board by the 35th minute, and they didn't hit the front for the first time until they registered their 3rd score 6 minutes into the second half, when Barry O'Driscoll collected Jack Horgan's point attempt that came back down off the post, as you said there, and promptly shook the net. He said Luke Conley, who'd usually be flying for them, was quite subdued. When there was a blanket around him, I can kind of see why. He kicked a sole point after the break to nudge them 2-2 to 5 points clear. But like this, like 9 points or 9 scores to 6 scores, and Paul O'Donovan wasn't too happy with the Carbery Rangers tactics. He's the Nemo Rangers boss. He just said trying to play and score against that type of defence is extremely hard. I hope I never coach that. I just don't like watching it. From a spectator point of view, the game is poor. If you're trying to get people and kids to play that game, I don't think there's any attraction to playing that game. They're entitled to do whatever they like, by the way. Will the opposition look at that and say, this is the way to play Nemo? I don't know. You'd hope any team would go out with an ambition to play football and win. For me, there is no satisfaction in playing that way.
If I'm coming up against Nemo in the future, I'm looking at these quotes saying, lads, they don't like it up them. Let's choke them out of this game. I mean, it's fine. Like, I'm glad that Paul is speaking his mind there, because you do need people speaking their mind. But Carbery Rangers are absolutely entitled to play the game whatever way they want. When you're out on the pitch, you're not thinking about, well, are the crowd enjoying this or not? You're only thinking, are we going to get over the line here and get into a county semi-final? Because we'd like to win something rather than watching Nemo Rangers collect another few titles.
Now, the caveat to that is it sounded absolutely putrid. Like, it sounded like one of the worst games of. I don't care. I'm not talking about the players here now. We're talking about we do like to see good football matches. We do like to see good hurling matches. This did sound like an awful game. When an unbiased reporter is saying basically how bad it was, I think it's probably not great. But listen, they are entitled to play whatever way they want, and it probably is a bit of a bullseye on Nemo's back. They're not the first team play like that against them, and they definitely won't be the last. I think Castlehaven tried to play them in an open game of football this year. You saw the highlights of it as well. Brilliant game of football, but it was an open, free-flowing game of football, and probably a game that Nemo are more likely to win than most playing that type of a game. So like the Bars, if they play them, definitely won't let them play like that. So it is probably about cutting your cloth to measure. And if you have to tie a team down that way, it is not great on the eye. Like I wouldn't be happy paying 15 or 20 quid to go in to see that. But teams are entitled to do whatever they have to do to get over the line. It's not particularly appealing on the eye, but if they get the result, I'm sure they won't care.
Yeah, St. Finbars are going to be meeting Castlehaven in the semi-final because Castlehaven beat Mallow by 2-14 to 13 points, largely part of goals from Robbie Minahan and Michael Hurley. Brian Hurley, he was quite good in the game. In the final 10 minutes of the first half, I don't think Mallow were able to score. I think they were under off pressure at that stage. Colin Maguire, Michael Hurley, Jack Cahalan and Minahan did their bit. Mark Collins and Conor Cahalan, they also played quite well here, so they're through. Also, the other fixtures, Ballincollig beat Carbery, so there's a Carbery Rangers and a Carbery 4-11 to 115. And then also in the relegation playoff, Ayr Oaks off Newcestown by 210 to 14 points. Do you want to take us into Kildare?
I will indeed, yeah. A big win for Naas and maybe looked unlikely at different stages, but it finished Selbridge 14 points, Naas 2-11. So Selbridge weren't particularly efficient in front of the goals. And some poor shooting, which by all accounts has kind of been their Achilles heel in recent years. This is their ninth semi-final.
Lost 8 of those 9 semi-finals, yeah.
Yeah,
9 in a row.
Like, it's an absolute killer to be at that stage and to have only gotten to one final. I think it was 5 points apiece at the break. Whereas Selbridge were probably inefficient up front. Naas were very efficient up front, even if they did hit a few more wides, maybe than they usually would. They were very structured and disciplined. The game was level with 10 minutes to go. But Dara Curwen, who was, by all accounts, very well marshalled by Mick O'Grady, the Kildare defender, who's put many players in his pockets down through the years, he was well marshalled nearly the whole way. And by all accounts, he only got free maybe twice in the game. And that finished with 2 goals that ultimately decided it. And it's amazing. We talked about this over and over again. When a team gets over the line after, a lot of struggles, how they tend to find themselves as the team that is able to get over the line now. And Dara Curwen came good. And like Naas have a lot of power that they can call on. And like you've seen Dara Curwen in person, as have I. And to me, like he has potential to be, a really, really top forward and potentially as good as a forward collection that Kildare might have. He has the potential to be their best forward over the next 4 or 5 years if he gets very, very consistent. And he was ultimately the difference maker. And it's important because Eamon Callaghan, is usually deadly for them, was probably a bit quieter, and they needed somebody else to maybe take a bit of that load. And by all accounts, Curwen definitely did.
Yeah, that game, apparently both sides mirroring each other, 15 behind the ball, an awful lot of the time. Paddy McDermott, very good on the break for Naas. Selbridge, they'll be pretty sick, I suppose, with all the scoring chances they left behind them. But like, as you said there, Dara Curwen, quiet for most of the game with Mickey O'Grady hanging out of him, gets the 2 goals late on. Wasn't it probably the same against, I think it was Shelmaliers last year in the Leinster Football Championship. He'd had a quiet game and then he just came up out of nowhere and scored a brilliant goal. And they obviously missed him then in the Leinster Club final. And I know Paul Mannion wasn't there for Crokes either. But I'm sure Naas will feel like they've got a team that can kick on to the next level. And they'll be playing the winners of a tie in Clane. That second semi-final isn't on until next Saturday. And then in 3 weeks' time, the final will be on. It's rare enough now, I think, well, certainly in dual counties anyway, where you can have one semi-final on one weekend and the other one on the next weekend. So you have a real opportunity to build up to these games, which is quite different to what we keep saying about the All-Ireland Inter-County Championships this year, where like one semi-final was on and then there's so many games coming. You've no time to really sit and digest one game before having to turn your attention to the next.
Yeah, I just, as regards the inter-county calendar, I just love another 2 or 3 weeks just to let things sit a bit more. So that, not being smart, so that we can talk about them more, so that we can look forward to them a bit more. Sometimes there's a bit too much going on. I think that probably suits Naas. I know they have a couple of dual players, Brian Byrne being one of them. I'm sure they're probably hurling next weekend, so that would suit them, the handful of players that they have there. But they're in a really good position to do the double again by all accounts, and they'll definitely be roaring favourites going into the football final anyway. Yeah,
so the Longford quarterfinals were on over the weekend. I'll just go through the fixtures. Columkills beat Mostrom by 15 points to 3-4. Mullinyochta staved off Ballyhale. That was 15 points to 2-8. Slashers hammered Rathclyne 6-15 to 2-11. And Dramard beat Killow by 3-7 to 11 points. So Colmcille were the league winners, and they came from the shock concession of 3 early first half goals to beat Mostram, who had dumped them out last year by a point. They're up against Longford Slashers next, who ousted Rathclyne in that 8-goal thriller on Sunday. Mullinachta, they rallied late on to beat Ballyhale, who are their neighbours, by a point, and Ballyhale looked set for victory when a goal 5 minutes from time put them 2 up, but Mullinachta called in their experience and had 4 in a row before Ballyhale got a late point to leave just a minute. The match today was Killow and Dramard. That turned out to be disappointing affairs after, Killow controlled possession early on. They failed to make it count. Aaron Farrell notched the first Dramard goal and they never looked back. And he ended with 2-2 to his credit there. In Cavan, Crosserlock beat Lacken 4-18 to 8. Killygarry beat Kingcourt Stars 2-16 to 2-15. We showed that goal earlier on. Cavan Gales and Gowna drew 1-12 apiece, and Rammer United also drew with Mullahoran. That was 10 points each. In relegation, Ballinalack and Larry United played, with the latter winning 2-18 to 13, and Lavey 13 points, Butler's Bridge 9. It means the semi-finals will be the winner of Mullahoran and Rammer against Killygarry, and Cavan Gales or Gowna, they have to play again to see who meets Crosserlock. Do you want to take us through to Carlow there?
I will indeed, yeah. There's a bit of a revenge mission for Mount Leinster Rangers. They beat Bagnallstown Gales 4-9 to 2-11 in the Carlow quarter-final. Now, I don't know if football means as much to the Rangers as hurling, but Bagnallstown beat them in the hurling semi-final, so I'm sure they'd be delighted to at least get that one back somewhat, even if it's not to the same level as hurling is appreciated maybe in the Rangers. But they're through to a semi-final. Rathvilly also booked their place in the last 4. They had a 1-9 to 8 points win over Éire Óg. And in Clare, there's Clare Senior Football Championship playoff, which was won well by Clondegad. Finished Clondegad 1-15, St. Joseph's Dora Bearfield 8 points, and Gary Brennan, the former Clare star, kicked 9 points. And there was a big one in the Clare Senior Football Championship relegation playoff. Finished Doonbeg 2-19, St. Joseph's Milltown Malbay 1-16. So Doonbeg was kind of nearly a few unusual circumstances, nearly found them in a relegation playoff that they probably feel that they should never have been in. So I'm sure they'll be happy to have gotten through that. Derry Senior Football Championship round 1, O'Donovan Rossa 1-13, Kilray 10 points. The Glen, who are obviously the reigning champions, 3-11, Ballinascreen 1-7, Dungiven 4-12, Banner 1-8, Swatra 3-10, Balahi 1-13. Schlockneil had a big win over John Mitchell's 3-19 to 3 points. Lavey beat Steelstown Brian Oaks 13 points to 8, and Ballinderry had a 1 point win over Owen Rua 13 points to 1-9. And I know you saw a bit of this, but I didn't see much of it. Obviously, the Donegal Senior Football Championship was on telly yesterday. I'll go through the results and then you might go into the Glen Swilly Nave Connell game a bit more. Kilcar 1-14, Killybegs 1-7. Guidor 7, Arua 6. Doesn't sound like a classic, but the Guidor are back in the semi-final again. St. Eunan's 2-15, St. Michael's 5 points. A lot of the word up in Donegal now is potentially that Rory Kavanagh will be the next Donegal manager. Whether an announcement on that is made while the club championship is still going on or not remains to be seen. And then Nave Connell 2-10, Michael Murphy's Glen Swilly 10 points.
Yeah, so I was kind of double jobbing at the time. I didn't get to watch it as much as I would have liked to have. But Jack McKellavou's first half goal was the game's big moment, actually, to set up a huge semi-final clash with Kilcar there. Michael Murphy was very impactful at times, but I think it was just early on in that second half when Nave Connell just turned the game around and turned the screw a little bit and kind of coasted home from there, 2-10 to 10 points, as I said. And it was just... I mean, Nave Connell have been there. Of course, Glen Swilly won a county title there. Was it 6 years ago at this stage? But Nave Connell have been winning it more recently, and they probably just have the likes of Leo McClune and Kieran Thompson. They just have a couple of bits of quality there that probably just gave them that edge throughout the course of this game. In Down, Castlewellan, they beat Glan John Martin's 3-8 to 9. Mayo Bridge beat Downpatrick 2-5 to 6. And Clonduff had just a point to spare against Ballyhole, 113 to 112. In Fermanagh, round 2 of the football championship, Kinawley beat Ederney 110 to 12 points. Ballinaleck were beaten by Derry Gonley Harps 112 to 19. Timor Shamrocks 10 points. Ern Gales 14, and Enniskillen Gales 4-12 Rosslea 2-13. In Leitrim, the quarterfinal, St Mary's beat Ahowillan 2-15-11. It was actually the same scoreline as Mohill had too much for Ballinamore. So Loud.
Ballinamore were county champions last year as well, Shane. Yeah, Ballinamore were county champions last year. Eamon O'Hara, who was over Tour de Strand the last couple of years, is over Mohill. So that's a big win for them. They booked their place in the semi-finals. And then the relegation playoffs, Drumahare lost to Glencar Manor Hamilton 3-14-112. And Gert Lettera had a 1-9 to 11 points win over Melvin Gales. By God, when you go down through it, and there's some amount of different games going on, we might even just fly down to the Roscommon Senior Football Championship. I have a dog here, Shane, in front of me here. I don't know if you can see.
Bring him on.
Right.
Is he from Roscrea or Roscommon or something?
Las Vegas. mad to find out more about the what's going on in the football championship. She's usually very quiet now, in fairness to her, but she might want to get out, might want to get outside. But just fly through the Roscommon championship here quickly. Lulu, after the famous singer. Roscommon Gales had a right good win over Michael Glavies, 4-15-2-8. Pádraig Pearses beat Strokestown 1-14-15. St. Bridget's had a 1-point win over Tulsk, so 1-10-12. St. Fallox had a 1-15-113 win over Western Gales. Fáilias, apologies. And Boyle had a big win over Clonagale. I think Clon were down a few players, but a big win for Boyle, 4-18-111. And by all accounts, hopes will be high that Boyle can reach their first senior county final in 95 years. County star Dara Craig, under 20 county star, I should say. He scored 2-5 in his first championship appearance of the season, and he scored 3-4 from play in this game in what was only his second start, while Roscommon colleagues Donny Smith and Keane McKeown were also on fire for the North Roscommon side. So that's a big win for them. And in the final game,
didn't have Paddy Gavin, Alton Harney, and Graham Pettit, so obviously they were down a couple of players. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, the big losses definitely at club level as well. And in the final game in Roscommon, Oran had a 2-15-2-7 win over Elphin. You might have a bit more information on the Tipperary Championship. A huge win for Commercials there in the Tipperary quarterfinal.
Yeah, 21 points to 1-2 over Arravale Rovers. Now, I don't think anyone would have expected Arravale to win that game, but it's just disappointingly one-sided there. Mile Rovers saw off Ardfinnan by just a point. Sounded like a very good one there. That was 12 points to 11. Upper Church Drumban will be meeting J.K. Brackens 2 weeks in a row. This was the football quarter-final. We're going to have the hurling one next weekend. So Upper Church drew first blood here, 111 to 10 points. And Lockmore Castleiney, as everyone knows, they're down a couple of players this year, but they keep marching on. They saw off Kilsheal and Kilcash by 110 to 11 points. Also in Waterford, Galtier beat Kilmacthomas. The Nair saw off Stradbally easily enough. Ballynacorty beat Clashmore, Kinsale Beg. And Rathgormack beat Kilrossenty. Do you want to finish up with the counties, beginning with W?
I surely will. Starlights had a 16 points to 112 win over Killenairn. Across the Beg, Ballymurn and St. Martin's drew. Gusran O'Reilly's had a 213-212 win over St. Anne's. St. James had a big win over Halfway House Bunclody, 318-310. Shelmaliers had a 1-8-1-6 win over Castletown. Shelmaliers are managed by John Hegarty, who's obviously the new Wexford manager. And Glenbarntown had a 113-2-4 win over Sarsfields. And the Wicklow semi-finals at the weekend. Bolton Glass are through to the final, where they will play St. Patrick's. So obviously Blessington were beaten in the quarterfinals. St. Patrick's had kind of been the dominant force in Wicklow for a couple of years before Blessington won last year. So Bolton Glass, who won it, I think, in 2020 against I think Patrick's had won a couple before that. So that's going to be an intriguing final in Wicklow there. There is some amount of games when you go down through it all. Sometimes there's nearly too many results. Maybe counties should be scheduling different games, different weekends, so we can get to spend more time on them. But I don't think that's realistic.
Yeah, John Collins said
so we can,
John Collins says Sean Tracy's had an unprecedented day yesterday. West Junior A football champions, West under 13B hurling champions, and West under 17A hurling shield winners in combo with Éire Óg hadn't won at B grade on their own for 28 years. And I suppose there's just a couple of more counties that we haven't. I'll just read out the fixtures from Louth, Meath and Monaghan. The results, I should say. RD beat St. Bride's 3-9 to 110. Newtown Blues had too much for St. Joseph's 2-14 to 14. Nave Martin, the Jocks, they beat St. Pat's by a point 1-7 to 9. And Geraldine's 4-11, St. Feckin's 3-13. In Meath, the quarterfinals there, Nafina beat Trim 110 to 10. Summerhill's off screen 2-19 to 8. Wolftones had too much for Gael Columkill 11-9, and Ratoath beat Moynalvey by 3-8 to 10 points. Also then in the Monaghan Championship, Octomullen 2-16, Castleblaney Fogs 110, and Dunamoyne 3-19, Carrick Macross 8 points. Oh, sorry, Sligo also, Coolera Strandhill beat Coolani Mulnabrina by 5-16 to 1-6. Turlestrand beat Drumcliff Ross's Point by a point, 8-7. Curry were hammered by St. Mary's 125 to 11, and Calgary St. Joseph's 14, Shamrock Gales 4-13. By God, as you said, some amount of results out there. Will we chance doing a go to the week?
Oh, you've caught me on the hop there. I'd probably
Derek Craig for Boyle. What's that?
Derek Craig from Boyle hit 3-4 from play. Yeah, I go for Owen Cody from Ballyhale.
Yeah, and I suppose Owen Cody. Yeah, do you know what? I go with that. That's not a bad shout. Just a reminder, we're brought to you by ogreretro.com. If you want to use the promo code OurGame, you get 15% off. Great range of jerseys and zip-up tops and the whole lot on the website there. So be sure to check them out. Also, we had our first coaching clinic at UCD on Friday night. We have a couple more coming up. The first one is going to be in Father Manning Gales in Longford. That's going to be Saturday, October the 15th at 11 a.m. there in Drumlesh. 40 quid. You're going to have Davy Burke, Oisin McConville and Colin Lally. Going to be a brilliant collaborative session there. We're also going to have one in Naas GAA. This is a hurling one with Dan Shanahan, Shane Dowling and Richie Power. What a lineup that's going to be. An emerging hurling club there in Naas. Has obviously had a lot of success in the last couple of years. So we're really looking forward to that. That's about the height of it. We'll see you on Thursday, Nick.
Is it Declan Nerney has that song, The Marquee at Drumlesh?
Yes, I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is. And the Marquee would be the thing that has kind of makes Drumlesh somewhat famous. We're about to redefine it.
Good man.
Right. Chat to you on Thursday, everyone.
Sound, Shane.